Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. This is a Revolution, a RevPro podcast here on Cromulent Wrestling. My name is George, and with me always is my wonderful co-host, Patron Saint of RevPro. Never going to grow old with that. Certainly not for me anyway. Dave the Mark, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm not sure the patron saint of RevPro makes me sound far too important, rather than just a mark who follows him around the country like a little kind of, lapdog that can't get enough of it. I think that's probably more my. I'm more like a mascot than I am a patron saint. But I appreciate the sentiment behind it. Otherwise, mate, I am good. I am knackered, if I'm being completely honest, after a very full-on RevPro weekend, and then diving straight into a busy week of work. But I also know that with a couple of weeks off coming up, I will be desperately pining for more wrestling. So, you have to take these weeks where you get a double show and lap them up, because that means that there's a weekend coming where there'll be no show, and then it will be a little bit of rest and rehabilitation and family time before we go again.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what you got to do, right? Family time. Don't want to be doing that. I mean, wrestling that we should be going to instead. But no, I fully feel you, mate. I just did one show this weekend, and that was enough to knock me for six by the time I got home. So hats off to you for making that drive up to Sheffield as well and going to that show. And two great shows this weekend. So even though you're tired, I'm sure you had a wonderful time at both of them, didn't you?
Yeah. The Stevenage card was great. Loads on it that I really enjoyed. The trip up to Sheffield was absolutely brilliant as well. I felt like that was a really good show for all sorts of different reasons to Raw Deal. Lots of little story directions and a couple of killer matches as well. So yeah, really, really, really good weekend all round. I imagine my trip to Sheffield surely isn't that different from your trip to Stevenage.
Yeah, so my trip to Stevenage should be about 2 hours door to door, but with it being a little bit later in the evening and the fact I was already up for about 6 a.m. driving to the Midlands for something else anyway that day, a little bit more tiring. So it probably took me closer to 3 hours by the time I ended up getting home. But yeah, not too bad, not too bad. The drive itself, it's just that tiredness. But I think it's just within that striking distance. If I wanted to do another one and maybe drive home the same night, I could just give it a go again, see what it was like. And I know I'm going to be back at Stevenage after that weekend because it was a special venue, one that to me comes across very different on TV to how it actually looks in there. It looks a lot more spacious on TV. Now I know there is a lot of space in that venue, but it looked like the space between the ring and the crowd was really far apart. Whereas actually, when you're there, it doesn't quite have that same feeling. Had a really nice intimate feeling. Reminded me a lot of when I used to go to Doncaster for 1PW and they put on the big arena shows up there. Very similar kind of vibe to that, which I like because you've got a nice area for the merch, you've got a bar, and then if you want to just go stand out the way somewhere, you can do that as well. It's quite a nice feel to it. So yeah, a lot of great people there as well, people that I've seen online and whatnot, interacted with on Twitter, and actually getting to meet face to face, and people just coming up to me and chatting. Yeah, lovely day, lovely. And yeah, I'm back there for sure for another event. But before we get into the kind of rundown of what happened on the shows, Dave, just thought I would comment on the reaction again to the video last week. So we had a very strong first episode, and we are keeping strong with the second. Thank you to everyone who has watched and who's listened. Our audio listeners actually went up from the previous episode as well, which is great. Seeing more subscribers coming on board. And I was looking at the figures today because I'm a nerd who likes to just look at these things and see how we're doing and where we're doing things. Dave, you will know because I told you this privately, but anyone who's watching this or listening to this, I just like looking at things and go, wow, this random person in Russia is watching our video. Like that to me is great because it just shows kind of the reach that we're having. If we're just reaching that one person, I don't care. It's great to me. And that's what this is all about. It's a hobby that I'm having fun with. And if we can bring other people on the journey, great. But this week, Dave, we added some more countries into the fold. So I can't remember where I mentioned Russia last week, but Russia is certainly there. We've got the US and Canada now firmly on. Well, no, sorry, we had Canada on board anyway. We've got the US on board now. have Germany, and we have somehow managed to hit Australia. RevPro is making its way to Australia.
I like that. I like that. Maybe it was Mitch Waterman down in Australia checking out a Rev Pro podcast, hoping that he'll be back again at some point this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's lovely, mate. It is. It's like we said it last week, but I don't mind saying it again. Like, I'd happily do this with nobody watching, just because it's fun to get to chat to you and get to like decompress everything from the wrestling and bounce ideas off each other, and like, it is one of those things where, like, I can't kind of emphasize it enough, and I'm sure loads of people can relate to it. Wrestling is such a niche, and if you do like wrestling and you choose to follow independent wrestling, that's even a bigger niche. And then if you decide from that independent wrestling that you're going to follow British independent wrestling and you're going to follow one particular British independent company, you are absolutely narrowing your circle of people that are going to have any interest or awareness in what you're talking about. So it is lovely. It is like a community and a family, and I love that. And I love it's lovely seeing people from different shows kind of like getting to meet and interact. And one thing that I've really enjoyed, that I kind of joked last year. I put a tweet out saying something about like uniting the revolution. Before we're all in, let's get let's get all the Rev Pro fans to meet each other, and we'll go and take over All In and make it like get loads of Rev Pro shirts out and kind of rep the brand that we love for the anniversary weekend and the All In weekend. But like, genuinely, one of my favourite things is the fact that there are people now that will go to shows that maybe wouldn't have gone to a show before, because like we'll go up together. And by going up together, they know, like, it's like, oh, you know, you're not making a long distance just to kind of sit by yourself. You immediately know somebody. But then the chances are that they'll know someone up there or down there, and I'll know somebody, and then we'll get to, you know, slowly over time, you start putting names to faces. This weekend in Sheffield, I found myself standing in the queue and sitting next to the same couple that I was at the last show. And we, you know, just chatting, and we realised that actually we sat near each other at the Birmingham show last year as well. And then, you know, we follow each other on socials, but didn't realise that we were who we were. You know, like, especially with, you know, where people have got names that don't necessarily or don't have a photo of themselves in their on their page. And it's lovely. It's like a big network, and it is lovely to kind of, especially the amount of positivity around it. And my favourite thing was somebody sent me a message saying, really enjoyed the podcast. It's really, really nice to have a positive wrestling podcast. And I love that, because that's exactly like the reason why we spend as much time as we do watching Rev Pro, thinking about Rev Pro, talking about Rev Pro, spending all the money going to watch the Rev Pro around the country, is because we really enjoy it. Like, it would be crazy to do it if you didn't really enjoy it, in which case, when you're talking about it, of course you can be positive. I'm sure there'll be times where we say things where we're like, that didn't really work as well as I thought it was going to work, or I was really hyped for this match and it kind of wasn't quite as good as I was hoping it would be. Of course that's going to happen, because, you know, nothing's perfect. But for every one niggle we might have, there'll be like 99 positive statements to like back it up. And that's not kind of like, you know, a mission statement or something that we're going to do by design to, you know, find a gap in the market or get more views or anything like that. We're genuinely not interested in that. It's just about getting an opportunity to spread some love about Rev Pro, and maybe if we can help, you know, help people that don't get to all the shows or don't get to see all the shows to kind of feel a little bit more involved, then amazing.
Fully agree with you on all of that, mate. And yeah, like you said, it's not by design that we're trying to be like really positive. Like, I think it's just an extension of kind of who we are and what we're enjoying about this sport and hobby that we love. Because I think it makes it easy going to these shows, because it's, like you said there earlier, about a great community, and I think there is a real community feel about it. And even when you go to some of the shows, like Southampton was the one I would go to, and I wouldn't get chatting to a lot of people, because naturally I'm a bit more of an introvert, which is weird for someone who is here hosting a podcast, I know, but that's me, and I find it really hard to like get in my own head and go, are these guys going to think I'm silly? Are they going? I get in my own head about it, And the way that I've been brought into that community in Southampton, and they've just brought me in with open arms, and it's cool, it's fun, it's like you just have that good laugh with them, good banter, and that's what I find with people all around at different shows that I'm going to. Like I said, people have come up to me and said, "Oh, are you George?" or "I'm such and such," and it's been great, it's been lovely, and I think that helps you stay positive. And you hit the nail on the head. Like there's two matches from this weekend where one I was expecting much better than we got, and like I said, that happens. Like I'm not going to sit here and rip it apart because bad nights happen. And when I say bad nights, just maybe not hitting the lofty heights that you set in your mind for something. It doesn't mean it was bad. It just didn't get to that level. And there was another match that, for me, just absolutely did nothing for me whatsoever. But that's because of me and my tastes. And again, I'm not going to sit here and go, "This was terrible" or anything like that. It just wasn't for me. And that's a phrase that you'll hear a lot from me. It wasn't for me because unless someone is actively bad and out there almost night after night injuring people, I don't think there is such thing as like really like bad wrestling. It's just stuff that works for you, stuff that doesn't. And I took my dad along this weekend. So my dad, first time he's ever been to a wrestling show in 32 years, and I think he's probably not even watched it on TV since I used to live at home, which would be about 2003, 2004. So he doesn't know work rate. He doesn't know any of that. He just went in with an open mind. And one of the matches that didn't work for me at all, he loved. He absolutely loved it. So it's just different things for different people. And I think that gives you the understanding of why RevPro does so well with what it has anyway, and how people could be so positive about it.
I think that's exactly right, mate. Like, there'll be. I remember. I'll use the example of the first time Chris Ridgway wrestled after the Revolution Rumble. It was the 229. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was him and Shigehiro Irie. And I remember going to the bar. I think they were. I'm pretty sure if I remember correct, they were on in the first half. I went to the bar, ordered a drink, chatting to a fan at the bar, and we talked about what our favourite match from the first half was. And Ridgway and Irie was my favourite match from the first half, and it was his least favourite match from the first half. He just said, "Oh, I didn't really do anything for me," and it's like, well, that's completely okay. That's the whole point of a wrestling show, having more than one match, isn't it? Like, you've got multiple matches, multiple different styles. Some people love a certain type of style more than others. Some people get caught up on some details that they can't get over, and it takes it out of them. Other people just can look completely past it. I know one of my friends has like a really dislikes the Revolution tag matches because like their theory of it is well, if it's no disqualification, why would any heel follow the tag in and out rule? Because there's no consequence for actually doing it. But for me, I can completely look past that. It never even crosses my mind. But then there'll be other things which can take it out of me. When you watch somebody and you're sitting there thinking, why would you be like where it looks very what's the word? Collaborative. Like in a moment that looks really collaborative, and you can look at it and be like, oh, that's I wish you'd found a more inventive ways to do it. And like you say, like you matches that you loved that or that you didn't love that your dad did. I was in Stevenage with my little girl. It was like her birthday night out. She's only ever been. She's an autistic little girl, and she finds life can be quite overwhelming. So I'd never taken to her anywhere other than St. Neots, which is the most family-friendly show and the quietest show. And that really works for her because she doesn't like loud noises. She doesn't like big crowds. She doesn't like all of that. However, she absolutely loved it. And one of the things that she said to me was she liked the fact that it was bigger and louder and darker because she could just be one of a large number of people in the crowd. There was no attention on her. Nobody could see her. She was just anonymous. Completely different experience for her. But talking to her on the way home about which matches we liked, and there are matches which I was like, oh, that was my favourite match, or I really liked that, and she was like, oh, I thought that match was a bit boring. I really liked this match, and that's her. She's a little girl. She's not gonna notice all the little details in a wrestling match that I love and I live for. But she she's still part of the crowd. And so for her to turn around and say, "Oh, do you know what? I really loved that match, and I really loved those guys." We couldn't be more different. She had an absolute crisis because she sat there and she looked at me and she said, "I really want Greedy Souls to win, but I don't want Sunshine Machine to break up. I don't know who to cheer for."
Love it.
And it's just like, you're like, cool, brilliant. That storyline's absolutely got her. 10 years old, like she's hooked for it.
Yeah, and that's it. Is it's the beauty of that, like hooking people and just drawing them in. And I think, like you said, we are so hyper focused on this product that we know all about it, but we watch for those little details, the little things that, because we analyze it in the way we do, not because we're trying to like really nitpick at it, because we just love it that we get all in on it. And sometimes you take that step back and you just look at it, and that was like so with my dad, and it sends me back to being like 8 years old and thinking the Warlord was the most devastating man in all WWF because him and the British Bulldog were feuding, and to me he just looked like the scariest guy ever. So yeah, and I love it. I love that she had the best time and she could just hide in that crowd and be herself. That's amazing, and that is probably my favorite thing about the entire weekend.
Do you know what something that I absolutely loved was that so we got her a phone for her birthday, and we didn't really get her a phone. We gave her my wife's old phone, so she's got like a really decent iPhone. There's nothing wrong with the phone. The contract had just run out. My wife had upgraded, and we got her. I don't know, like I can't remember what it is, like £15 a month or £20 a month contract with. So she's got everything that she needs. And we wouldn't have got it for her at her age if it wasn't for the fact that next year she leaves school. She leaves primary school. She's going to come to the school that I work at, that I'm the head of maths for, which isn't in the village we live in. It's in the local town. It's in Bedford. And none of the other children in her school are going to that school. And one of her other best friends is going to one of the private schools in Bedford. So they're all going to go off on their separate journeys. And we were like, do you know what? They're going to need to be able to talk to each other at that point. And we'd rather get her safely using a phone now whilst she's young enough to let us kind of supervise her. Blah, 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 blah. But it meant that she was sitting there and she was taking photos at the show. And I loved so much that she felt brave enough and confident enough that at the end of the show, she went up to Nina Samuels and she went up to Brendan White, and she said, "Can I show you the photos I took of you?" And she loaded them up on her phone and she showed them to them. And I was just like, for a little girl that is so anxious about the world, like, one, so much love for the wrestlers that are great at interacting with kids, and there are so many of them at RevPro, and there is no one better than like a Brendan White or a Nina Samuels, like people that are just like clearly used to having like kids interact with them. There are so many of them. Like Gabe Kidd was wonderful to her when he met her. RKJ and Zach Knight have been as well. Robbie always is. Like, they're just. I don't think they always realise just how special that they're making these moments for these kids, because they obviously do it like 2 or 3 nights every weekend. They're wrestling in front of kids, but for someone like Sophie, like, she's only ever been to like a handful of wrestling shows ever. She's only ever met like 2 or 3 wrestlers ever, and to be able to have the confidence to go up and do it and know that she's not going to be made to feel uncomfortable is so special. And that's just, one of those little highlights of my weekend. Before we get into all the action, just like massive shout out to wrestlers that go out of their way to make kids feel comfortable around them. It's so appreciated.
That's amazing. And you know what? I, as a 40-year-old man, I struggle sometimes going up to the wrestlers and speaking to them. And that sounds really silly because they're just people at the end of the day. And I'll go, should I ask them for a picture? Should I tell them about this? Should I tell them about that? And every time you do, they're always great. Like you said, they are just super good people. But the fact that she was able to go up to them and show them those pictures and get some pictures with them as well, amazing stuff. And I was obviously sat opposite you in the arena, and I could see you both. And I saw at one point with a camera. I'll tell you though what I did think. I thought, I'm giving her the camera, or you're giving her the camera to take all your pictures for the night. I thought that's what you were doing, but I'll take that back. That's a very wholesome thing that was happening there. So, and wonderful. And one of the things that I noticed, and I'll pick up obviously on the action later on, but you said it massively there about the wrestlers who make people feel, or kids feel comfortable. I another one I've got a massive shout out for there is Amira. She is one that
Oh yeah,
when you are not watching the action, if you just watch her, and that sounds creepy, not meant to sound creepy, but if you just watch her, like at the entrance, when Michael was doing his thing, she was wandering around every little kid. She was hugging them. There was something happened later on in the night where I think they got a bit close to the crowd, and she was going over to the kids and go, "Are you okay?" Giving them a hug, all of that sort of stuff. And I've seen that in other venues and stuff like that. That I'm not a parent, but I can imagine when you have kids and it's your kid that they're doing that with, it is amazing to kind of see that. So that was nice stuff.
yeah. She's an absolute diamond, mate. Like with the kids, my little girl Phoebe. Which came another time, like Amira leant down and held her hand and gave her a hug, and she was literally just like made up for like the rest of the night.
Proper memories that will last a lifetime for the kids.
That's it, mate. Exactly that.
Well, shall we crack on with the actual event and what's happened over the weekend? So, Raw Deal happened on Saturday night. Like I said, great venue in there. Really hot crowd throughout the whole night, I found. And there were some people that were hotter than others. And it was an interesting crowd, is probably the most positive way I'll put it. But you know what? The one thing that venue did not lack was noise. And I love that. Much the same, I can struggle sometimes getting into it and really start shouting, especially when the section I'm in is quiet, because I don't want to be that one lone voice. Even when the rest of the venue is going for it, I don't want to be that one lone voice. But I noticed that chants were coming around the venue at times, and everyone started getting into it. And the thing that I loved most for me that night as well was the first match, the very first match. My dad had a chant going. He understood what the chant was straight away, and he was giving it a Robbie X chant. So we started off with Young Guns versus JJ Gale and Robbie X. And you know what? This was a weird one for me. And I say weird one because I wasn't expecting this first. I'm so conditioned to Luke being in that fourth spot before the interval or the main event spot that actually the opening spot was an interesting one because just wasn't expecting it at all. But I really enjoyed that match a lot. You've got three guys who I know a lot about in there, being Luke, JJ, and Robbie. You know what you're getting out of those guys each and every single time, and it's never short of very good. And then you had Ethan Allen in there, who I don't have a lot of knowledge of because Young Guns kind of they were there and I was aware of them, and then Ethan got injured, so I'd never really seen them, never gone back to watch a lot of RevPro on demand, and it's only been the last couple of years for me that RevPro has become a bigger part of my wrestling viewing. So really intrigued by Ethan, and I really loved how he complimented Luke and what he brought. You can see why they worked so well as a tag team because just a real viciousness to him, even though he's maybe not quite as big and bulky as Luke feels. He does feel that bit smaller, but has, dare I say, a much more vicious kind of vibe and style to him. In some ways, reminded me of like a Gabe Kidd, and just felt a bit more unhinged, like the unhinged version of Luke. Which, when you're saying he's the unhinged version of Luke, that's saying something because Luke does not take shit. But yeah, really great match. I thought all of the guys put on a good show, got the crowd really going right at the beginning. And yeah, great win for Young Guns at the start of it.
Yeah, completely second everything you said there, mate. I'm like you. I saw Ethan. He had a comeback match for the Royal Quest 2. It was him and Luke versus, I think it was Desperado and Doki. And I was sort of like, I really enjoyed it, but it was clear in that match there was a lot of like the focus was on the New Japan guys. And then obviously we didn't see him again for a long time with the injuries. And when he came back, I've been really excited to be like, oh, okay, look, let's just see like, one, how good is he? And two, Luke is a much more accomplished wrestler now than he was like in 2024 than he was like in 2021. So how well will they still gel as a team where Luke's had all those reps and all those opportunities to progress as a wrestler, and Ethan sadly hasn't. And then like you just like Ethan just gets in the ring and you're like, oh my god, you're so good. Like, he is vicious and spiteful and nasty, and I love it. He has this really, really good balance. I think Luke has it too, but he has this really good balance of playing an absolutely horrid little wretch of a wrestler heel, but heel in style and aggression more than there's no shithousery or shenanigans or anything like that. It's just rough and aggressive and up for it and in your face, and a bit like a Roy Keane on a football pitch, or do you know what I mean? Not necessarily a vile person, but a vile opponent. But then at the end, there'll be that legitimate handshake and bit of respect. And you're just sort of I can go from sitting there seething at him for hurting one of my favourites to at the end being oh, he's a good lad actually, and yeah, fair play. That was a good fight. Better man won. And then you forgive them of all their sins immediately, despite the fact that a minute ago they were trying to break somebody's arm. I thought I really enjoyed it. I think the fact that they could open with Young Guns goes to show how stacked the card was, but not stacked in the sense that I've got the card in front of me here. I'd just to kind of remind me of the running order and things like that. And you're it's not stacked in the sense of what a big York Hall show or something where it's just title match, grudge feud, big all the biggest names in singles matches. But it's just stacked in the sense that every single match had something to really look forward to in it. Getting to see Young Guns still has even though we've seen it a couple of times now, but for Stevenage, that's the first time they've ever seen Young Guns. They've never wrestled in Gordon Craig before. So that has a real kind of aura to it. And then that you've got you got Neon for the first time in a singles match in RevPro to come. You've got the group with no name. I feel like we need a name now. The women, you've got those two matches where that's going to escalate storylines. You've got the street fight that's going to come. You've got the Sunshine Machine high stakes match, and then you've got the two matches which are going to blow everybody's socks off, which are the main event where whatever way they went is going to be really significant in the result, and Zazaya and Ricky Knight Jr., where that no matter what way they go with it, the match is going to absolutely bang and be the best work rate match of the show. So yeah, it was one of those. I always feel it when I'm sitting next to my daughters, because I'm up for anything. But when it's kind of when it's oh, what's the next match, and you hear that bit of music and you go, oh, it's so and so now. I always want to be able to tell them that it's oh, it's one of your favourites now. And literally every single match on this card had something where even my little girl was sort of oh, I'm looking forward to this one, as someone who just kind of very, very casually keeps up with everything that's happening and just enjoys going to the show and living in the moment. It's quality. I think they got the balance really right.
Yeah, I think I really say a lot there about what you just said about the quality of the cards. I've been going through doing a bit of digging, just looking at old cards, because one of the things that I really like to do is torture myself about the shows that were close by, that if I'd gone to this show or knew this was going. So I got into RevPro in 2014 for the first time, and then a show in 2015, then kind of left it right until I think it was about 2018 when PAC came in 2019 for a show. And I go back and look at all the cards that happened in Southampton and Portsmouth, which were my two nearest ones. Go, oh, I've missed all these guys. But when you go back and look at those cards, and I mean this in no disrespect, because it's where RevPro was at the time, but you would have a really kind of staple level of talent. And again, no disrespect, but it's not the same as the staple level talent you have now, right? British wrestling is really kicked up a notch. And they were holding the fort, they were doing the work, but you were relying more on those. Hey, we've got Penta for this show, or we've got this person for this show, we've got this person for this show, and all the the novelty ones that you might get now more so on your calls, your Uprising at Crystal Palace, all those sorts of big names to supplement that. This card, looking at it, didn't have any of those kind of wrestlers. Not one. It's all of this core that they've been able to really work with to get in there, get over with people, whether that's someone who's been around for a while, like Oku, whether it's someone who is kind of graduating from their character into the next phase out, like even a David Francisco, or bringing someone in and making one of our own, as we like to say, in SIZZLER. Like, they are really doing great stuff. And that's before you even talk about the way they've just exploded with women. Like, what they're doing there and actually grabbing that interest. I think this is a really great card. And like I said, there was only one match which didn't do it for me, but that was never going to do it for me. And even then, that had stakes to it as well. So, yeah, I think this was just a really, really good card overall. And I kind of came into this, my expectations were this would be, if you're comparing it to like WWE, right, back in the day in your 2000s, this would be like your No Mercy, your Unforgiven, something like that. It's not your top level, like your York Hall shows or even your Crystal Palace shows. It's the rest of your pay-per-view calendars, which are going to have those bigger matches than you would maybe get on Southampton or Sheffield or something like that, but maybe not the biggest matches in terms of like your top work rate versus work rate or blood feud versus blood feud. And I think something like a Michael Oku versus Anthony Ogogo was perfect for this as well, because it got Anthony Ogogo a main event spot as well. So yeah, I really loved just how they paced this card as well. Although saying that, I will say at the beginning, right at the beginning for me, I did kind of, the pacing felt a little bit off for me and kind of what I was looking for. And now I'll kind of go into that because at this point, after this match, another tag match was then announced. And it was Shah Samuels and Oscar Leuber versus David Francisco and Golden Boy Santos. And I kind of thought, okay, you've had one hard hitting tag match, and now you're going to go straight into another hard hitting tag match. And that was obviously going to be a street
The
fight.
exact same thing.
Yeah, and I kind of thought, yeah, I was like, where is this going to go? And obviously, it went with an injury, what I thought was an injury angle at first. My thought about it at first was maybe they just want to get more heat onto the match. Maybe that's what we're going with. And I think I saw on Twitter today that there may be a bit more of an injury there with Shah Samuels. So just wanted to obviously send the best out to Shah. He's great at what he does in RevPro and don't like to see anyone injured. Want to see him back soon. But it felt like it was setting up an angle and kind of like going, okay, we're going to get this later. And that's what it came across. It was like, okay, fine. And then we followed that up with the announcement that it was going to be a 6-woman tag match, which then felt like, okay, we're going tag, tag, tag. And that just, right at the beginning for me, kind of felt weirdly paced. And that is probably my only thing I'd say overall of the night. I'll go, not the way I'd have done it, personally. But, as we've said numerous times, there is a reason I'm sitting here or sitting in the seat I do at events, and I'm not in the seat that Andy Quilden's in. He knows what he's doing. He does much better than I do. But how did you find the pacing at the beginning of the show?
So I found that I had the exact same thought as you when they announced the street fight, because also for me, I felt like, and I mean, let's get it right, the street fight actually ended up going on in the 4th spot, which is exactly when I thought it should happen. Like, it needed to happen in the middle of the card just to break things up for the fans, because it's going to be a bit of a sprawling like melee. So when they announced it as second, my first thought was, oh, I wouldn't have done it here. But then obviously it was a bit of a bait and switch, but a bait and switch for in a positive way, because we then got all the big pop for Yuta Nakashima coming back. So for anyone that wasn't there, Francisco and Golden Boy absolutely did Shah over. They Pillmanized his ankle like multiple times, wrote Shah off. There was nice little details with like Craig Armand kind of like getting messages to Francesca and them supporting Shah back. And then did Andy, am I remembering it right? Andy came out and said about Francesca. Andy spoke to Francesca as well, like off, but I don't know if it was on camera or off camera, but it was very clear for all of us to see. And then Francesca announced that we're going to try and do the match later, give Shah time to see the doctor. And it was at that point where you're like, yeah, Shah's not coming back out. I wonder what they're going to do. And at that point, I kind of thought, surely it's got to be Nakashima. My only other thought was, if it wasn't Nakashima, were they going to do like a little pop with like Mike DeVecchio, who's kind of got a bit of history with those guys and was at the last Stevenage show, so would be a familiar face for them. I'm really glad it was Nakashima, because I feel like Oscar's done such a great job of of doing a singles excursion when he came over
Yeah.
for a tag excursion, but I'm really glad that he now gets to kind of go back on the course direct to what they were originally on. I thought so. My first thought was we're getting quite a lot of the tag matches now, which I didn't think was an issue at all. But my worry was that further down the card we would then get a little bit of a moment where I thought, oh, that's where a tag match should have gone in. But actually, what I will say is the first half I went really quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact, the first couple of matches came in about 14 minutes, and then the next two came in just under 10. So that kind of second quarter, if you like, so for the third and fourth matches went really, really quickly. And then you had in the second half, the second half felt extra stacked, and you weren't drained for any of it because the first half had gone so quickly. So I actually think it worked out, paced perfectly for me. And I feel like you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I'm not sure if putting the two tag matches on at the same time is right. And then exactly as you say, like Andy knows that isn't what's going to happen. And what a shock. The guy who's been promoting wrestling matches for like his entire adult life knows what he's doing to get a crowd up for it and paced it perfectly. I'm really curious to know which match, and I know we're going to be like super positive, but I am curious, which match didn't land for you?
For me, it was Sunshine Machine versus Greedy Souls. So, you know what? And this is something, again, being in a positive way and putting it the way I do, Sunshine Machine just for me, they don't connect with me. I don't know what it is as a team. They just don't connect with me. And I have tried because everyone loves Sunshine Machine, don't they? I feel like, am I just trying to be like cool and different? And no, I'm not about that, right? I don't know what it is. I enjoy them more when they are in like a triple tag team match as opposed to a one-on-one tag team match. When they're in multi-tag team matches, I think that they add so much to it. But there's just something for me in singles tag team matches that doesn't. And I don't know why. I can't really put my finger on it. And I think this match here, the reason it didn't land for me was because at no stage did I ever think that they were in doubt. And that's not me trying to be all kind of hipster and go, oh yeah, I know best, I know how booking works. I just didn't feel like the show for me where that could happen. And that's all it was for me. It wasn't trying to be different or anything like that. It was just a mixture of a team who just doesn't land for me in the way that it does for other people, plus the stakes not quite being there in what I thought would happen, meant that the match didn't land with me, but I knew that would likely be the case anyway. And it didn't take away any of my enjoyment from the event. It was the right match to have on. And I still kind of, even thinking towards like when we're moving towards Copperpox and whatnot, even though I've said they don't land for me as a team, you will know from like the group chats, I've been saying, I think this could happen. I think that could happen. So I'm invested in their story to see where it goes because I think it's an important story for RevPro to tell. And I think it could be a really interesting one how it ends up. But actually, I'm probably not going to be the guy who will be upset if Sunshine Machine, the team splits, because I think there's much more interesting things for me and what I like that you could do with both guys as singles. And I never normally say that because I'm a tag team guy.
Do you know what though? Like I completely respect that, and I think it's completely fine. Like you haven't said anything that's critical. You're not saying there that you don't think they're good at wrestling or anything like that. You're not being judgmental. You're just saying that act doesn't really do it for you the way it does for other people. You appreciate the fact that other people really enjoy it, and that the crowd seemed to really enjoy that match, even if for you it wasn't. And like, what's wrong with that? That's absolutely fine. Like, I genuinely was shocked that you said that match because I did really enjoy it, and I'll tell you how invested I am in the Sunshine Machine story. I won't get to go to Summer Sizzler. So my wife and my kids and my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, and his partner are all going on holiday together. So we're all going to Penarth in Wales for like 4 or 5 days. I think we're going on Sunday. I think we're coming back Thursday or Friday or something like that. So I'll be in Southampton the following week, but I won't get to go to Summer Sizzler because that's the day we go to Wales. And I know that Summer Sizzler, for them to be doing that show, and I think we'll talk about it more next week when this card gets announced, is going to be a really big deal. And I know I'm going to get massive, massive FOMO if they announce someone that I've never seen live before or anything like that. But I'll tell you what will genuinely give me the biggest anxiety. If Sunshine Machine are booked on that card, I'm going to be absolutely dreading the idea that the Sunshine Machine storyline could end with them losing at Summer Sizzler and I'm not there to see it. Because they're like my guys. Like I when I think about like my favourite acts in RevPro, often a lot of it comes with who I think the best are, who I enjoy the most, but also like who I feel like a connection to the stories that they tell. And when I first started going to RevPro shows, Sunshine Machine were the tag champions. My first RevPro show, they beat Aussie Open, and they were on every show, like literally every show, and I absolutely fell in love with them. And then when there was like last year, when there were a few months where they weren't on the show, like I really missed them, and every month would be like, oh, I really hope Sunshine Machine are on this card, and then they've come back, and immediately I was so invested in their Great British Tag League. There's when they beat Greedy Souls in the 229, I was like celebrating like West Ham had scored like a cup final goal. Like I was literally like jumping about. Like I must have looked like the biggest mark in the world, or that I was just trying to, I don't know, like get the camera to point at me or something. Like, but it was all completely genuine. Like I really, really felt emotional that they'd won that because I didn't think they were going to. I thought Souls were going to win that match. So it was like a real shock. And this week, objectively, I never thought Greedy Souls were going to win. I didn't feel like the storyline was going to end with a defeat to Greedy Souls in Stevenage. I felt I kind of have a couple of theories as to where it might go, and I'm kind of convinced myself that will be the case. But even then, and this always happens when you're like, it's so clear who's going to win a wrestling match. I always think if it's a really good wrestling match, they'll still get you to suspend your disbelief and have that moment of like where you don't breathe for 3 seconds. And it came when it was such an innocuous moment as well, because it wasn't from like Soul Destroyer or anything like that. Danny Jones, I can't remember who he got, but he got somebody in a small package, whether it was TK or Mambo. And it was just that moment where I was just like, oh my God, this could be it. And I genuinely, I don't think I breathed for like those 3 seconds. I just stared and was like, oh, phew. And even then, like afterwards, I'm like, well, of course it wasn't going to be it because I'm invested in where I think the story's going. But that was perfect for me. I loved that match. That was one of my favourites on the card. For me, like I know exactly what you mean though, when like other matches sometimes or other acts where you just don't have that same emotional reaction to, and it's like completely okay. What was your favourite match on the card?
So my favourite match was the match that was before that, and that was RKJ versus ZZLER. Now, I knew coming into it that was likely to be my match of the night. Like I love ZZLER since he's come into RevPro and know nothing about him. Just everything about the guy and what he does just gets you into him. Like even like the little things like the jumping over the crowd to land down the floor. Like he just does things differently, and he just feels like a blank canvas. So much potential, really raw in a lot of ways. Then you got someone like RKJ who I don't think I've ever seen him put on a bad match personally. I think even when I say his worst, like if it's even just like a regular just match, he puts out a really great match. Then I've seen him put on some really, really top class matches as well. I just knew these two had it in them to do something really special. So I already knew that was going to be my match of the night before we went into it. I had two others, which one didn't quite hit the heights for me, and one which really over delivered for me as well on where I thought we would get with it. But you know what? Before we go off on a side quest, let's get back round to the start of the card. So the 6-women tag team match. Now, what I'd like to do, Dave, if you don't mind, is kind of incorporate not only this match, but the other women's match that happened during the
Mhm.
night, and also a little bit of what happened in Sheffield, because this was a great set of angles and matches which covered both shows and really gave a lot of talking points. So I thought the six-woman tag was great, really, really good. I thought watching the teams come out, I thought that the women's stable, the ones with no name, again, all the stuff we were saying last week about the women's Sapphire, just how deadly she is looking. Nina is looking great every time she's in the ring as well. And I'm seeing massive improvements every time I even see Liz Evo get in the ring. And not saying that before that she wasn't good, but every time I've seen her, just that extra progress from her is getting there, getting there, getting there. She's got her character work down. And I think she's shown now every single time what she can do in the ring. And that reflected for me as well with the match against Kanji the following day in Sheffield. And one of the things we touched on last week was the dynamic of the group as a whole, and are they going to be stronger as a unit, and what's going to happen like when they go one on one with people. And my theory behind that was, well, if they go one on one, they're going to lose the match, and I kind of saw a bit of that happening this week as well, because you had Nightshade pick up the loss against Haley J. You had Lizzie Evo losing to Kanji when she was one on one, and even though she won the match, Alex Windsor had distractions which really showed why she got the win. So for me, it was like, again, she won, yes, as a singles, but she had that backup. Now, you don't truly believe that Alex Windsor needs that, but at the same time, it was just that extra kind of level of, well, what would happen here? And on the other side of the team, you've got Kanji, who I think Kanji for me is really stepping out of kind of that mix of women and starting to stand on her own even more so
Yeah.
as a figurehead of the women's division. So I think for so long it was Alex, Danny. And I think
Yep.
Kanji is standing alongside, or she's certainly creeping up there alongside them now. You had Rio, who is looking great every time she's in the RevPro ring. Want to see more and more of her. And then we had Lucia Lee, who I thought the part she played in this match was so good. She had great facial reactions the whole time. Like, the one thing that I wish I could have done when I was taking my pictures was just capture some of these reactions that were coming on, like just sitting there and watching. She looked like she was getting the shit beaten out of her the whole time, but she knew how to sell it. And I thought they all did a great job in this match. And then touching on the Haley J versus Nightshade match, that's a match I didn't have a lot of expectations for, because I didn't know a lot about Haley J other than what I've
Mhm.
seen on OVW show wrestlers. And I thought it was much more of a character based match, much like I was expecting. But the ending, like, got a literal what the fuck out of me,
Yeah.
because when I
Is
don't know
that
if
when
you,
you?
so
Yeah.
I text Dave and just put what the fuck, because so when I was sitting there, I don't know if you could hear it or not, but before Alex came out, there was like the sound of chains, but about a minute or two before that, there was also sound of chains. So I don't, because I was like, I kind of sitting there going, here's something happening here. And obviously, so the spot was that they turned on Nightshade and put it through a table. But before, kind of, when this mugging was going on, you could hear these chains going. And Alex Windsor came out, massive reception. And then they turned on Nightshade, put her through the table. And the crowd are just absolutely booing her. And we thought we knew where this was going. Like, it was going to be some
Yep.
kind of always odd couple team of Kanji and Alex going against the rebels as such. And now it's like, well, where do we go from here? Because for me, it was hard enough to predict the other three women that would stand alongside them necessarily at what we're presuming is going to be the Copper Box match rather than Summer Sizzler. But now with Summer Sizzler, I'm going, well, Danny was mentioning that as well. And it seemed weird because Danny was mentioned in that match. And we know that she is busy for Copper Box. So yeah, there was all of these things at play here. So I don't know where we're going with it, but I don't mind that. I know what the end goal is going to be, or likely to be, this 5-on-5 women's tag match. But I like that I don't know exactly what we're getting. But yeah, I think they had a really strong outing this weekend.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, mate. I feel like Kanji really feels like the captain of the ship. and I've been a Kanji fan for ages, but I do feel that since she came back, I reckon it was the tail end of last year when she kind of came back and became like a kind of regular feature again after a little bit of a break. Her presence has just really, really grown. She makes so much noise in the ring, and I think it's something that like some wrestlers do better than others. She makes all this noise whilst she's wrestling, which feels completely natural and normal, and it's not like something to cringe at, which it can be when it feels like someone's forcing it. But it also just this sound. I always find that like the noisier a wrestling show is, the noisier everybody is. So like when you get those lulls and everything goes quite quiet and the crowd go quite quiet, that can last quite a long time, and you kind of need somebody to break it. But Kanji's constantly breaking the silence herself, and it just keeps this like constant murmur. Her interactions with the other wrestlers are spot on. I thought Lucia was brilliant with just this like hesitant, not fully confident. She's in the ring with Kanji and Rio. Like they are like two of the best, and 100% she's working the idea that she doesn't see herself as the same footing, and it's completely her working, and I love that. I got worked twice in the last 2 weeks by RevPro beautifully, because when Alex came out in St. Neots, I was sitting there thinking she's going to join the baddies. Nightshade wasn't on that show, and I thought she's going to be the fifth baddie. I hadn't thought about them turning on Nightshade. I just thought she was going to join them. And then she didn't, and she came out the hero. She even got my bloody hero of the week at DaveTheMark.com. And I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, cool. That makes perfect sense. Her and Kanji have got respect for each other and have done for a long time. Her and Danny, we can definitely say, earned each other's respect in the dog collar match. So it's perfect storyline for her to come back onto the face side of things and lead that team. So when she came out at the Gordon Craig Theatre, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, yep, they're going to get their comeuppance now. She's going to scare them all off and get a big cheer, and we're going to be really glad to see face Alex Windsor back. And boom, she works us again because they turn on Nightshade, didn't see it coming, put her through the table, looked absolutely class. Table as well, like really, really good, like best table spot I've seen a RevPro show. There's not many. They don't do it often, but I've seen a few, and that was definitely the best one. Really enjoyed it. Like something that's really, really small that other people might not notice, but because I take so many photos at shows, it's something that I really notice when I'm looking back. So I like today, this evening before we came on, I've been doing some editing of the St. Stevenage show, sorry, and I'll do the Sheffield show tomorrow. And I noticed that in all the photos with the stable of women, they're so comfortable in the ring with each other that they never ever stand in each other's way. Like for the hard cam, for Sarah who's taking the Britrest pics, like they have all got their designated spots and they look amazing together. And it is they all hit their poses at the same time. Their facials are amazing. They just look like a team that have been together forever, not a team. And what's crazy is it's less than a month. I know it's a month today, I think, that they formed, that they came and invaded the 229. It feels like so much longer ago than that. I think that the Lizzie match in Sheffield was really, really good. Got really good reaction from the crowd as well. And I like the finish because, she didn't lose. They just decided to throw the match away and beat up Kanji, but she was about to lose. Like she was about to lose clean. So there's like a nice little bit of story there. Will they turn on Lizzie? Does Lizzie get a pass because she brings so much more to it than maybe they thought Nightshade did? Don't forget Nightshade had already lost against Danny in Southampton as well. So it's not that she lost just against Hayley J. She's lost her 2 singles matches. Everything about it was great. I love like the little details, like in Francesca and Sarah both like buggered off out the way the minute the women come out, and it's like we're not taking photos, and I'm not doing the ring announcing, I'm not being anywhere near those women. So Mercedes is taking photos and Sapphire's doing the ring announcing. In Sheffield, they went and got Sarah and marched her back to ringside and made her take photos. So now I imagine Sarah will be back at ringside taking photos at every show, and it will be normal again. But it's just that little attention to detail of like, do you know what? We're completely selling the fact that this was a heinous attack, which is like unprecedented, and everybody's working it so well, not just the wrestlers, but all of the like supporting cast as well. I really enjoyed it, and I said to JJ Gow at merch actually how in order to get these extra women on the card, we're getting what is often a multi-man match and a singles women match, which adds variety. I love multi-man matches. I don't want a card that's 8 singles matches. Like as a viewer, as somebody in the crowd, I want variety. I don't want variety just for variety's sake. If there aren't good stories to tell, like that's fine. Don't force it. But this card was really nicely balanced, and as another consequence is it's not like putting on a second women's match is taking anyone's spot. We've still got all the RevPro regulars on these cards, but what we're doing is we're getting matches like Young Guns versus JJ Gow and Robbie X, and we're putting people together in multi-man matches that maybe we wouldn't do normally. We'd just have them in a singles match. And that creates these interesting dynamics. Like I've really enjoyed everything between Chris Ridgway and Connor Mills, from them teaming in Sheffield to them teaming successfully in Sheffield, teaming disastrously in the 229, wrestling against each other on the next Sheffield show, but then shaking hands at the end and showing respect with the view that therefore we might see them team again down the line. Like all of that feels like it doesn't necessarily feel like that storyline was done as design, but more of like a nice little, you know, we've got these lemons, we might as well make lemonade out of them. We're going to put some people together to get a greater card. And just the sheer number of people on the cards has grown. Like,
yeah,
you know, we're getting 8 matches, not 7. I've got no problem with that. I've said before, I think a 7-match card is my favourite card. I think 9 times out of 10, I prefer a 7-match card to an 8-match card. But when the cards are this good and this well balanced, I'm loving the 8-match cards. Of those 8-match cards, we're getting like at least 2 women's matches on the last 3 shows in a row. St. Neots had 3. We've got a couple of tag matches, like the Revolution tag on Sunday in Sheffield. Just the excitement that I could feel from the people I was sat with, when it was like it's now time for the main event, and you're like literally just watching everybody come out, and it's like just the how stacked that Revolution tag was, and you're also sitting there thinking they never do these for the sake of it. There's always something that's going to come out of it. I wonder what it is. I wonder who's going to get their moment. Whether it was they did it before where like Leon Slater was down 3-on-1 and ended up winning. That was a Sheffield Revolution tag. Like, and he got his moment. This month was about Ethan Allen getting his moment. We've had Revolution tags which extended the Trent and Oku storyline this time last year. This year it extended the Jacobs and Oku storyline. We've had ones which have set up matches that have built in feuds and added to feuds. This one of the ones I was really fascinated this time was why a Sunshine Machine in it? Is it going to be a Sunshine Machine? Are going to have something with Young Blood? Are they going to have something with Young Guns? And then Greedy Souls come out and interfere in it, and you're like, wow, there's a tag team division again.
Yeah,
it's not just a couple of tag teams. Like, there feels like there's divisions again everywhere. Women's division, tag division, cruiserweight division, heavyweight division, and I really, really feel like there's like really good like props to everybody involved over the last like month or so. Just how good the cards have been throughout June. 5 shows in June, and every single one I think hit really, really well.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. So to kind of give you an insight into me. One of the things I really, when I say I dislike, I don't dislike them by design, but I find it really hard maybe to get invested into is multi-man matches. So multi-man singles, yeah. Multi-man tags, when you get trios upwards, I generally find it hard to engage with those because they often feel like a bit of a novelty on a card. I didn't feel like that with the women's match at Raw Deal because this unit are like togetherness as a unit. The people that are coming together, it makes sense why they've come together against them. It makes sense they're trying to break them down. The story there felt like a genuine like reason to be against each other. And like you said, they are working so well with each other and keeping themselves together as a unit, hitting all their markers together that when they come on screen, you want to see what they do next, whether it is as a group, whether it's singles, whatever that dynamic is. And I think RevPro are the only company, realistically these days, that put on a multi-man tag match that has me invested because I like the rules that they have with pins, submissions over the top rope. It just adds stuff into it that you don't get in a normal like one. And usually when you see these things on like AEW, for instance, I love AEW, but you know what? You put a 4 versus 4 man match on there, I'm switching off, right? My brain just switches because it's just a filler match. But RevPro give it reverence, and you reeled off a load of things there. Now, when I saw the only one I think I've seen live was in Portsmouth, I want to say tail end of last year, and it didn't have quite the big names that this one did. It was essentially, I think it was Team Cameron Kai versus Team Gideon Gray / Levi Muir, if I remember right. And that was Cameron Kai's.
It was the 26th of November show. So it was the one that I missed because it was my wife's birthday. It was the only show I missed at the second half last year. And it had like Scotty Rourke was on it. Jordan Said wrestled on it before he joined the Contenders. Kelly Six was in it. It was a real kind of mishmash of people. And even then that one seemed quite cool because it was like, okay, it feels a little bit like there's an opportunity here for someone to impress.
Yeah, it felt to me, it felt like the Cameron Kai coming out party, effectively.
Yeah. I'll tell you something I really enjoyed about the Revolution tag on Sunday. Even then, it's not formulaic. I think back to, so this one, first of all, this one only went like 22 minutes, I think, which previous ones have gone all the way like full half an hour. So it was quite like quite rampant, but also there were quite a lot of early eliminations, and we ended up like in the past there's been not many eliminations for the first like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then a few eliminations, and then like the final 3 or the final 4, and then you've got your own little story there. This one was lots of eliminations to begin with, and then you've got this surprise of we're now going to get Ethan Allen versus Isaiah for like a good like 10 minutes singles match, and you're like, I've been desperate for that as a singles match, but now I'm also like, well, I've kind of seen it now, but I also want to see it properly now. Like they did enough to make me at the time feel like I was getting like, you've given me this cake. And now you've revealed that, like, you know, when you cut the cake open, like it's one of those surprise cakes that's got all this glorious stuff inside that I didn't know was there. But at the same time, you've also told me that, oh, by the way, we're also going to make you an even bigger cake like next week. And like it was just really, really well booked, and it was refreshing because one thing that like I never feel it, but others might, or maybe one day I will, going to all of the shows and seeing all of the matches, it does mean that you're like, you don't, like, you know, simple things like Cameron Kai versus Robbie X on Sunday. Like, wow, this is going to be really good. But then you've also got, oh yeah, I remember that. We watched it a couple of months ago in the 229. The number of times where I've seen 2, 3, 4 matches between a pair of people, and I've seen them all live, but they do it in such a good way where it's like, yep, I have seen the same match multiple times, but it doesn't feel like I've seen the same match, because just because you've got the same cast doesn't mean it's going to be the same movie. You've got different iterations of it. You think about, like, you talked about AEW, like, I loved the Death Triangle versus Elite Best of 7 series. And I loved how every single one of those matches was completely different. At no point were you like, oh, we're watching these 6 wrestle again. And it's something that I feel like RevPro do it really well. And they don't spam you with matches that you see them so frequently. Like Revolution tags, I don't know, I haven't got it in front of me as to how many we've had like this year, for example. But we're 6 months into the year. I think it's only the second. I remember one in the 229 at the start of the year. I think they are the only 2. Maybe there was one more, but definitely no more than 3 if there was one more, because I wouldn't be sitting here not being able to remember 2.
I only recall one myself, and that's the most recent one. That's the only one I recall.
Yeah, and that's quite like that. That's well done. And when they do repeats of the matches, like Cameron Kai versus Robbie X, it was beautifully done this time because Robbie won last time. Robbie won, and it was the first time Leighton Buzzard and Cameron Kai interacted. This time, we've extended that storyline, and now Cameron's won. But it's not like, oh, cool, Cameron won, he got his win back, now it's 50-50, we're going to do a rubber match. Like, maybe at some point we will get a third match, but it's not like it's the rubber match in the series. It's more the fact that this is a big part of Cameron Kai's story. You know, he doesn't get many wins, but when he does get a win, it feels massive. I remember when we watched him beat Richard Holiday in Southampton together, and it was like, it felt like a really significant moment because it was, not only has he won a match, but he's beaten, you know, an import for that show. I didn't have Cameron down to beat Robbie X. I wasn't expecting it. And when it did happen, like, it was a real natural, like, pop. It was a match that started out probably the quietest on the card in Sheffield. The crowd were quieter for that match than any other match. By the end of the match, they got "This is awesome" chants. Like, that's like the proper kind of like New Japan style, isn't it? Of like, start off slow, build it and build it and build it and build it until you got the crowd exactly in the palm of your hand. I love that. And it's things like that. Like, that was one of my matches of the weekend, that Kai and Robbie match, and it's one I'd recommend people going out their way to watch from the Sheffield show. I thought the Revolution tag was great. There was, you know, really significant moments that, you know, Michael Oku pinned Luke Jacobs. You know, that's really significant. There'll be lots of people that go under the school of thought of, okay, that's the equivalent of Oku being the one to hold up the belt the night before the WWF or WWE pay-per-view, isn't it? That means he's not winning on the pay-per-view, and you get those, like, you know, old school theories. Luke then completely demolished Oku and left him there for Ethan Allen to pin him. You know, that was nicely set up. It was a nice moment for Ethan to be the one, you know, the last one standing. But then he literally wasn't standing because Mills came out and destroyed him. Completely took his knee apart. So loads of stories being extended whilst also delivering really, really enjoyable matches. I know we've gone about it like in a really kind of sporadic way as opposed to like just going through the card, but I suppose it's quite nice just like thinking about like all those moments which have really stood out, you know, like a few days later. And speaking of Mills, the Mills versus Ridgeway match on Sunday in Sheffield was really, really quite something. I knew I'd be well up for that because it's my kind of, you know, dirty technical wrestling. But one thing I loved about it was just how silent the crowd were when they first started, like completely silent. And then the audible gasps as they start to build up the violence in the match. And I kind of see like those technical matches as a bit like modern day hardcore matches from when I was a kid. When I was a kid and they'd get out all the weapons and you'd be like, oh, it's getting nasty now. You'd like get really excited for it. Now for me, it's like, oh, he's really digging his hat, like knuckles in on him there. Look at the torque on that knee, and it's all the, you know, they're working it as well as the old guys did with all the worked weapons. But it's just, it completely draws me into it, and and nobody, I don't think anyone in RevPro does it better than Mills and Ridgeway of just making everything look so painful. I want those two to keep working together, whether that's against each other or with each other, for as long as we can have it, because it's been the highlight of every show they've been on for me.
Absolutely. I have said that if we are not getting Destination Everywhere anytime soon, then I want Mills and Ridgeway in a tag league together. That's what I want. They are fantastic. I think because you're in such a small venue comparatively to a WWE or AEW size arena, but you're in these real small shows and you can sit and watch it all happening with your own eyes. You can hear those sounds when that crowd is silent. That really ramps up that violence. And I think that's where these smaller arena or venues that RevPro runs comparatively to the bigger shows, that's where you really kind of get into it. So yeah, I'd agree with you completely there. And speaking of like kind of big moments as well, and big matches with big moments, Michael Oku versus Anthony Ogogo, a match for me that completely over delivered. It really felt like, and again, this isn't a criticism, but it felt like they were working hard to kind of manufacture that real kind of hatred element to it. And obviously, they put the video out of the 229 and the famous Bag of Quavers line and stuff like that. And I was looking forward to this, but it actually felt by the time it got down to the ring and Michael was standing there with the belt and giving it all that, like the heat was there. And I think Michael just bumped like a maniac for this match. And that was the one thing my dad came away, he was going, oh my God, the things these guys were doing. And I was thinking, that's how it looked to someone who just doesn't know what wrestling, like truly who's doing what and whatnot. But he's thinking, oh my God, these two are just like really going for it and all that. And Agogo was, don't get me wrong, like the way that I'm seeing his progression as well, but the way that Oku was doing everything to kind of sell for him to make it look even better. And I think there was a spot where I was just like, oh my God, like where I forget what it was exactly, but all I remember is Michael just go over the top rope, down into the crowd to the right of me. And then there was another bit where he kind of came flying over the other side and it was the dropping about.
The one over the ropes was him setting up for the half crab.
That was it.
It was like, you know, when there's a classic like Triple H spot where Triple H, you know it's happening because Triple H is setting up for the pedigree really close to the ropes. And you knew that meant the guy is going to flip him up over and he's going to go over the top rope. So Oku is next to the ropes, setting up for the half crab. And I'm thinking, okay, Oku's going to kick him and he's going to go into the ropes. I never once thought Ogogo is going to kick him and he's going to backflip over the top of the ropes and land completely unprotected on the floor. Like it took everybody's breath away. And the second one was the pounce. When Ogogo pounced him, and he flew up in the air and just bounced off the ropes. Like there was no elegance to it. There was no kind of safety to it. He just hit the ropes and then hit the floor. It makes me laugh that Oku posted it on Instagram as a little reel of the two back-to-back, and Flash Morgan Webster commented on it saying, I refuse to like this post because I do not want to encourage you to keep doing things that are going to cause you harm. Like, and you know Flash is saying it with like a really big smile and a really warm heart, but it's just like, dude, don't hurt yourself. Like, you're too good and your career is going too well for you to get hurt doing something like this. I don't think Oku gets enough credit, and that's like the guy gets all of the rave reviews for how good he is, and he gets and the two Ospreay matches that the world saw because they got the 5 and 6 stars. All three of them are amazing matches, but the two matches that were in London put him on the map. And people are like associating as being this great worker because of those two matches. But actually, it's like, no, you go and watch his match with like Ultimo Guerrero. Watch his match with Anthony Ogogo. Watch his match where he's wrestling someone who is either not at his experience level or has a limited kind of, I don't want to say limited ability, but like a limited range because of the fact that they're an older worker. Like, can you imagine Jericho versus Oku in a singles match? It would probably be one of the best Jericho matches you've seen, because Oku is so good at hiding the weaknesses of his opponent and absolutely extenuating and exaggerating their strengths by putting himself like on the line to do it. And I thought this was brilliant. I've talked a lot and I've written quite a lot about the significance of Anthony Ogogo's RevPro run. Prior to coming into RevPro, he'd only ever wrestled, like, the match against Cody went just over 10 minutes. He wrestled a match for an indie that went like about 15 minutes. I haven't seen the match. I've got no idea whether, like, how good the match was, but everything else he'd done was 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. His match with Shaw, his match with David Francisco, both came in sort of like over the 10-minute mark. Every RevPro match he's had has been between 10 and 15 minutes, and they've all been good. He has not wrestled a match where anyone can tell me afterwards that that wasn't a good match. The only people that are there giving him, you know, the "you can't box, you can't wrestle" chants and stuff. I get it when it's like it's heat and you're trying to give the guy heat. I hate it. I absolutely hate it when the heat is actually aimed at someone's ability. Like, you don't. Andy said it afterwards. He doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, and
He doesn't
I
need
felt
the
that's
money.
why he was coming out afterwards.
Oh, 100%. I don't believe that was planned in the slightest. I don't think Andy came out and addressed the fact that, you know, Anthony Ogogo deserved his flowers. I don't think that was ever planned on doing it. It wasn't on the live stream. And I feel like if it was planned, it would have been on the stream. I feel like it was a reaction to the fact that actually the crowd weren't giving him like his flowers. He just wrestled a nearly 22-minute match. He wrestled a main event, like a Rev Pro work rate main event. And there will still be loads of people that will say that it was Oku's worst title defense because it was against Anthony Ogogo and he's a boxer, he's not a wrestler. And they'll give it all that crap. But it's just because it's like low-hanging fruit. You're just having a pop at someone because of the fact that you don't like it when people come from other industries into wrestling.
Yeah.
You're not telling me for a minute that Anthony Ogogo did not put his heart and soul into that wrestling match.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't work his absolute socks off. That he didn't meticulously like plan everything to make sure that he did the best that he could do, and that he, you know, represented RevPro well, that he represented AEW well, and he represented himself well. And also, like, Michael Oku just pinned Anthony Ogogo clean in Stevenage in the UK for a British indie. This is a guy who has never been pinned in the United Kingdom in a wrestling match. And he's a guy who's only ever lost one wrestling match against someone who happens to currently be the WWE champion.
Yeah.
Like, that's really, really significant. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't. And we know, we've all heard the stories of people that have said, I'm not losing that. I'm not losing a match. Or I'm not prepared to do that. Or I'm not prepared to lose whilst I work for this company. Or I'm not prepared to lose to that guy or in that town or whatever. And, you know, he's laid on his back and he's taken a free count in a small town in the UK with a few hundred people there to watch it, because it's for the greater good of Michael Oku's career, for RevPro, the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. And, you know, I wrote about it before, Ogogo has benefited massively from working with RevPro, and RevPro have benefited massively from working with Anthony Ogogo. And I don't see how people can't see that. I think that they can see it. They just choose to go for the low-hanging fruit, personally.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't think there's much more I can add on to that other than just everything you said. I think Ogogo absolutely delivered his end of the bargain on this, and he did everything that he needed to. When I say earlier that I think this over delivered, I think there was a level I was expecting it to get to, and it was a perfectly fine match. But I think these two, and you can see, like, you don't get this level of match that we got without them both having that input and that desire and that want to do things. What was really funny is I was sat right next to Stairs, and I heard this guy saying to him genuinely, he said, great match tonight, mate. Like, really enjoyed that. And he just looks at the guy like, shut up. Like completely,
Yeah.
because he's not wanting to give it away. When he came out back from that call out, you could see that he didn't want to, and I think he was really trying to keep himself composed and hold himself together, because I think people were giving him his flowers at the end there. Yeah, I'm really happy with what the guy does. I'm really happy with what he did there. I've kind of seen him twice outside of the normal wrestling show environment. Once was just a brief 5 minutes outside the 1865, and you just see what a nice guy he is. And I don't want to
really
take that.
Really humble, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I like. Like, for what that guy's achieved, and like, let's be honest here, right? Will Ospreay, when he comes outside like the 1865 and whatnot, he's just chatting away. Like, you can't believe it, but you can believe it, because he's this guy that grew up just loving wrestling, right? Anthony Ogogo doesn't have that same attachment we all do, which I think is why, wrongly, he gets a lot of that hate, because you get the hardcore crowd together. You don't have the same love that we do. I couldn't give a shit, right? If that person in that ring does what I need him to do, and that is put on a great match, tell a great story, and get me invested, I could care whether this is your life's passion or just your day job, right? I couldn't care, as long as it is getting you what you need and getting me what I need. He absolutely did all of that. Yeah, I want to see now. I'm like, right, what's next for Anthony Ogogo? Like, that is what's coming up for me. What is next? Now, you've probably heard the phrase, like, I forget what it is exactly, but every day men think of the Roman Empire or something ridiculous. It's the phrase. Honest to God, I think for the next month, this match will be my dad's Roman Empire, because as we're coming out of it, he was saying the same thing. He was like, that was amazing. I love this. Like, this really captured him. And he also agreed. It was funny because we were talking about the different chants, and he said that he didn't like it that people were getting really personal with Anthony Ogogo either. And he said that, I mean, even for him, he felt that you only won bronze kind of was a bit of a personal. Now, that's the one for me that kind of it kind of, I don't know. For me, I don't see that as egregious as the you can't wrestle, you can't box, like, because that the whole you can't box thing is really untrue, because he's got a medal there to prove that at that Olympics he was the third best, right? The guy can box, and he's proved that in that match he can wrestle as well. So I think people, I'm just gonna say it out there, they need to shut the fuck up and just actually appreciate what we have with this guy. If you don't like him, he doesn't connect with you, that is fine. But the one thing I had a little bit too much as Stevenage was people feeling a little too comfortable with being a bit judgmental on people's look, being a bit judgmental and open with the fact that they were telling Ethan Allen good when he said he couldn't wrestle for a long time, when Anthony Ogogo was out there saying you can't wrestle. And I would like to say that it was by far not that, like, all those people, like, by far the crowd was great, but there was a lot of those voices. And I'm not saying this is Stevenage specific, because this is only the first time I've been there. I've heard some similar things at other ones as well. Shut the fuck up with that. Respect what these people do. You don't have to like every wrestler on a card. You don't have to like every match on the card. Don't make it personal. Yeah.
I have some personal principles when it comes to wrestling that I won't at any point change. They're my personal views. I'm not going to preach to other people. I'm not going to say to someone else that's been going to wrestling for way longer than I have, and as you know, you can say what you want, do what you want at the wrestling, as long as you're not being, racist, homophobic, anything like that. That's, obviously, but you're there to have a good time, and as long as you're not, you're not crossing the line into a hate crime, I don't mind. Enjoy yourselves. But personally, for me, I will raise my kids, and I will go to wrestling matches saying, cheer for the good guys, boo the bad guys. Even if secretly you really like the bad guy, they want you to boo them. They want you to give them heat, even if you think that they're your favourite guy or you really like them when you talk to them at merch. They want the heat, so give it to them. Cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys. have your chance based around their stories, not based around their personalities and them as people. Let people make mistakes and bloody forgive them for it. Don't constantly like bring things up and neg on them for it, because like, can you imagine if you made a mistake in your day job and people are still giving you shit about it 2-3 years later? Like, just if I'll say it because I'm alluding to it. The bloody chair shot Caven does my tits in. It's just like the lad did something that didn't go tremendously well. Let him live it down, for goodness sake. Like, it does my nutting. In terms of like, yeah, there's always gonna be like, there's always going to be these things that split people in terms of what they think is right and what they don't think is right. I just feel like when you're judging somebody and it's coming across like you're judging their effort levels and their commitment levels and their ability, like, it's crossing a line personally for me.
Absolutely, and yeah, we were saying at the beginning, we don't want this to sound too negative, and I don't want that to come across as like a negative at the end. It's just something that was really important to me, and I really wanted to get out there. I was trying to find the words over the weekend because there were a few bits of that it did sour a little bit for me, the experience. But overall, Dave, my experience of Stevenage was a great one. I thought the event was really, really great. I've loved the show. It's left me looking at the next few weeks, where I think over the next 7 weeks, we've got, I think, 5 shows or something like that. Now, looking at the time, and we very much need to wrap up in a few moments. So I might carry over the question that we've had from Tea and Tights podcast. I might carry that one over to next week, which might tie in nicely with what we've got coming up. But Dave, just before we kind of finish up, we've seen some big announcements come up for, well, beyond this. So some SIZZLER, just as the tweet from RevPro says, WTF. I've been trying to theorize. Do you have any theories yourself on what you think it could be that you'd like to share? Or I don't have any I'd like to share yet. I will keep mine until the card is announced. But I have a little notes document with like 5 or 6 things, which I'm calling my outrageous but plausible potentially, which I will share once the card is fully out there. But is there anything that's kind of getting in your brain?
So I don't get to go to this show, so I'm very much hoping it is an audience with David Francisco, where David will be doing a live chat with the crowd for 3 hours about everything that's been going on in his world since he left the Contenders division, which I can watch from Cardiff and Penarth on my holiday and not get too saddened that I wasn't there for live. That's what I'm hoping for. Sod all of you lot. You're not getting any good matches. If I can't be there and I can't enjoy it, then neither can you. That's my way. I'm going to be completely selfish and an absolute child about it. No, in all seriousness, mate, it's one where, like, why would you do a York Hall show 2 weeks before the Copper Box if you didn't have something up your sleeve that's going to be bang tight, that's going to get people reaching in their pockets to pay another 50 quid, 100 quid for a ticket? It makes me wonder. Obviously, we know that it wasn't like always the plan to do this, because the 11th of August was a Southampton date, and they put the tweet out a few weeks ago saying we're going to move the Southampton date to the 18th. And at that point, you're kind of like, okay, that's random. Maybe it's a venue thing. Maybe the venue's not available that day. I don't think anyone was sitting there thinking, they must be doing another York Hall show on that day because it's so close to the Copper Box. But it does make you think, maybe there's someone they want to work with that's not available for the Copper Box, but is available on the 11th of August. I feel like it's going to be something worth buying your tickets for. And I would absolutely encourage people, like, I buy my tickets to shows before a single match is announced, and I've never regretted that, whether that is Sheffield, St Neots, Stevenage, Southampton, 229, But like a York Hall show, there's no way you're going to be disappointed. Like, and also, I will just say this: like, if anyone's sitting there thinking, oh, I'd quite like to go, but I'm a bit skinned, there's a lot going on in August. Buy a ticket on the balcony. Buy a ticket on the balcony because they're so affordable. But buy a ticket on the balcony and you get the best view, completely uninterrupted view of all the action. You are literally just over the ring, like you're almost hanging over it, and you'll create such an atmosphere up there. If you're a quiet person and you like to just sit and study and watch it, you can completely do that. If you're someone that likes to get involved, starting chants from the balcony or getting involved in chants from the balcony adds so much to the atmosphere. The wrestlers really enjoy it. You can tell because they're always looking up there because it's like, I think it's quite a clear view for them and a natural eye line. I'd really, really recommend it. And if money is tight, and I sound like a proper shill now, please believe me, I don't get paid by RevPro to do anything. I just bloody love them. Look at the seating plan because there are loads of there's no bad seat in York Hall. I've sat all over the place. There are no bad seats, but there are some really good bargain seats if you're not too fussed about things. And also, you can buy your seat and then choose to stand at the sides. I remember I asked the question whether or not you can do that in a Twitter Q&A a year or two ago, and Andy was very much like, yeah, of course you can absolutely do that, as long as if they're for a reason, someone like one of the security said, can you get back to your seats please, you do. But I've literally never seen that at a RevPro show where anyone's been asked to return to their seat, because it adds to the atmosphere. And if there's 3 or 4 rows of people sitting and you're standing behind them, you've got this perfect view. And you might have only paid like 30 quid for your ticket to get in the building. Just feel like it's one of those ones where I feel like I don't know anything about the card at all, but I just feel like some people will look at it as there's a lot going on in August. This is the one I'm not going to go to. And then the minute they announce it, are going to be desperately thinking, I wish I had got a ticket, or making a compromise on what ticket they get, because some of the high profile seats have been taken in the pre-sale.
Absolutely. And I'm very much the same as you. I was kind of thinking, why would you do it at this stage? And it makes me think one of two things. Either someone has become available for this show that is going to be can't miss for this level of show, or someone has become available for the Copperbox show, and the planned main event of Copperbox is maybe now the planned main event of this York Hall show, and is changing plans slightly. I don't know, and this is just me putting things. And this is the beauty of the show, of when it is, and throwing a real spanner in the works from our ability to work out what this main Copperbox anniversary show is going to look like. Hence why we're going to push our review of that back 1 week. But like you said, the fact that there's a pre-sale, the fact that when we get to Sunday, I think it is, the early bird prices are gone, and then the whole card is dropping on one day. There is something there. I don't know what it is. I already know that I'm going. I've got money set aside for it. I've already bought my train tickets to London. When I said to the wife about it, I was like, there's just something that feels like this is going to be can't miss. Even though she comes to a few shows and she likes to come to the big shows, she does not like going places on a Sunday when there's work the next day and all of that. We're old now. As soon as I said this, she was like, yeah, get me a ticket. So we're hoping for something good. And I think even if our wildest expectations I've got in my little notes that I don't truly believe are what's going to happen, but just things that could happen, even if none of that happens, I know it's going to be a great show. If nothing else, it'll be my first time going to York Hall. So
I mean, just think we've got Callum Newman at the 229 this Sunday. If you weren't watching the live stream, anyone at home, you might not have picked up on that, but Andy confirmed it on the live stream for Raw Deal that Callum Newman's at the 229 this Sunday. You got Donovan Dijak in Coventry on the 28th of July. They're 2 big names immediately, and two big returns. Callum's obviously been a mainstay of RevPro for so long, but we've really missed him, and he's really grown out in Japan. Dijak wrestled for RevPro a fair few times in the past, and he's literally like Andy's straight on it the minute he leaves WWE to book him straight up, but didn't book him for York Hall, booked him for Coventry. It just makes you think like, these cards are like must watch, and therefore the York Hall show can't miss. We're going to, so we recorded on Tuesday night and then we dropped the podcasts on Friday. So next Tuesday we'll do a review of the 229, but it will also be a perfect opportunity to digest the card. If I no-show it, it's because I'm sitting in bed sulking, like having an absolute strop at the fact that I don't get to go. So it might just be George on his own reviewing it and me, or I might come on and just, bring a few non-alcoholic beers and drown my sober sorrows. David Francisco 3-hour. I tell you what, David Francisco 3-hour TED talk.
Wonderful.
That's
about Cadbury's. Yeah,
that is what I want it to be. An
Fabulous.
evening with David Francisco.
Well,
actually,
you know what? I think that sums out quite nicely about our feelings of everything, kind of how long the show's gone on for now. So I just want to thank everyone who is watching and listening. Thank you so much if you've made it this far. Truly, thank you so much if you've made it this far. Dave, where can the people find you?
At Dave the Mark, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, DaveTheMark.com. Thank you to everyone that reads stuff.
And clearly in the maths department at Bristol and Bedford as well. The hotspot of British professional wrestling with Dave the Mark there.
Absolutely.
You'll find me at Cromulent Fellow on Twitter and at Cromulent Fellow on Instagram. You'll find YouTube at Cromulent Rest. And until next week, everyone, we are out of here.